good to be with you again. As somebody said, Debbie said before, it's a long time coming, and then you get me twice in a couple of months. Like buses, isn't it? Can I just ask a question? The petition that you mentioned before, is that the Arise Africa petition?
Yes.
It is? Right. I'll draw your attention to that then. I'll just say something about that. Petition, the Arise Africa petition is something that Open Doors are doing to try to get the world to look at what is happening in Africa at the moment. Because generally the world doesn't see what's going on in Africa. I was watching, I turned to the TV this morning, and there was a comment made about in Lebanon, Israeli border, there's 1 million people displaced. And that is terrible, isn't it? In Africa, there are 34.5 million people displaced at this present time. We don't hear anything about that on the news, do we? And a few weeks ago, there was in Burkina Faso, for example, 200 people were killed by a terrorist attack in Burkina Faso. Did we hear that on the news? If it had been in Europe or if it had been in, America, that would have been headlines. Please sign that Arise Africa petition. We see the Open Doors is trying to get the global community to see what is happening to people, our brothers and sisters, especially in Africa at this present time. So please sign. And I know they also there is a prayer a month of prayer that you can download and pray something about Africa different days of the week for a month. Doesn't matter which month you do it in, but it's 31 days of prayer. So, sorry, that's a bit of a digression from me, but just mentioned that petition there, and it just brought it back to my mind as well. And please do pray for Africa. I've got one of my paintings here, as I usually do. Not always, but usually I have one of my paintings here. I'm going to paint something up on the board. It's a word that's very familiar to you, especially this morning. But if you've not seen this before, you'll be struck by the fact that I'm actually using red paint on my paintbrush, but I'm going to paint yellow letters. So watch out for the yellow letters as they appear. It's a word we've used a lot today already. Can you see these letters appearing? Squint your eyes a little bit if you can't see them. Turn your head on one side or something like that. Can you see that word? Yeah. It's harvest, isn't it? And that's what we're celebrating today. And can anyone tell me, actually we've used that word so many times today, we've sung it so many times. Can anyone tell me what the word harvest means? What does the word harvest mean? Anybody? Someone at the back, yes.
When you're harvesting something.
When you're harvesting something, yes, it is the process of bringing in the crops, isn't it? It could be wheat, it could be apples, it could be plums. We had the song. There's also rice, all sorts of things. It's the process of harvesting it as well. We call that to harvest, is bringing in the crops, isn't it? But it means something else. It can also describe what we bring in. The fruit and the crops and everything that we bring in is called the harvest as well, isn't it? So it can be used as a verb, to harvest, and it can be used as a noun, the harvest. But the harvest can also mean the time, the period when we do the harvesting, when we bring the harvest in. It can mean different things. But when we celebrate, that's why it's so much to do with our food. So it's a time when we have harvest services like this, when we can give thanks to God for all the food that we enjoy, that's harvested in. Now, in this country, traditionally, because our harvest has always tended to be around this time of the year, we've always celebrated harvest in September, October. Because that's when the different countries in the world have their harvests at different times, depending on their seasons, depending on their climates, depending on what crops they're growing. And nowadays we're fortunate. When I was growing up, and I'm getting old, but when I was growing up, there were some foods that you couldn't get at different times of the year because they were not harvested at that time. But now, because of international food and coming in from all over the world, and such like we can get whatever we want. In my day, when I was a child, I could only get strawberries in June or July, somewhere time around about that, because that's when they were picked. Nowadays, you can get them from all over the world, can't we? Well, harvest is all about giving thanks for our food. Now, normally, or I say normally, it's the wrong word, normally, frequently, in many churches, there's often the reference to a promise that God made. Can we have that promise up on the screen for us, please? Yeah, it's a promise that God made. Can we read that together? After 3. 1, 2, 3. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. Can anyone tell me who made that promise? Who was it who made that promise? God, that's right. It's God who made that promise. And God made that promise at the end of a very, very famous story in the Bible. And I wonder if you can work out which actual story it is. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a clue on my painting here. You see what I'm painting? An ark. That's right, it is an ark. And actually, ark is actually means box. Because basically what that was, we sometimes refer to it as a boat, but really it was a big floating box. And God, why was this ark built? Why was this ark? I say it was a big box. It was actually 150 meters long. Now bear with me, because I meant to check this before, but I didn't get a chance to. But I'm going to measure, in a way, this length of this hall, okay? So count with me as I make the steps. You ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18. Something like 18. The ark was 150 meters long. So it's nearly 10 times as long as this hall. Can you comprehend that? 10 times as long as this hall. It was actually 25 meters wide. So let's have a look. Go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 10. Say 10. Okay, across here. The ark was 25 meters wide. That's 2.5 times the size of this. So if anybody could do some arithmetic quickly, how many times could you fit this room on one level of the ark? 10 times 2.5 times, about 25 times, isn't it? It was, am I right there?
Yeah, 25 times.
About 25 times. 25 times the size of this room fitted this in this box, but actually there were 3 levels as well. It was enormous. It was big. It was a huge, big floating box. And what was the ark meant to carry? Animals, that's right. How many of the animals? 2 of every kind. That's right. Actually, not quite right. Because some animals, like those that were used for food, like cows and sheep and goats, there were 7 pairs of each of those. But all the rest of the animals, there was 2 of every kind. So a lot of animals, isn't it? Well, it was so big. And then there was all the food for the animals that had to be stored, and the food for the people that were going to get on board. Now, who was going to get on board the ark? Does anyone know? Who built the ark? Who was Noah? Noah was told to build the ark. And he was told to build the ark by God. You see, the reason why God told Noah to build the ark was that he was so sad and angry by the things that people were doing, by the way people were behaving. And he decided he was going to send a flood to destroy everything. But Noah was different. God saw that Noah was different. He saw in Noah a man who was faithful and obedient to him, and who lived a good life. And so he told Noah, he warned Noah that he was going to send this flood, and he told him to build this ark. He told him how big to build it, and he told him what he had to do in gathering the animals in. And it was him and his family who were going to get on board the ark, because God had decided he was going to save Noah and his family. And so there was Noah and his... Does anyone know how many sons he had? 3. Yes, he did. So Noah and his 3 sons. They were all married. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4 wives as well. So there was 8 people. 8 people that were going to get in the ark. Now, Noah tried to warn everyone else that there was going to be this flood. But what did they do? They just laughed at him. It's a really very sad story, this story of Noah and his ark. That the people just laughed at him. They wouldn't gather in. And this ark, I missed out a little bit. It did have some windows in it, down the side. Whoops. And it did have a door in the side. And when Noah had got all the animals on, and the ark was finished, and Noah had got all the animals on, God closed the door of the ark, and he sent rain. And boy, did it rain. We think we've had a lot of rain, but this rain was so heavy and so continuous. It actually lasted for 40 days. That's right the way through the school summer holidays. But it wasn't just ordinary rain. It was torrential, continuous, constant rain. And it came down so hard that it flooded everything and covered everything. But the ark that God had told Noah to build, that floated on the water. And so Noah and his family and all the animals on board the ark were saved. But very sadly, everyone else wasn't. Everyone else and everything else was underneath the water. So it is such a really sad story. The floods covered everything for months and months and months and months. After nearly a year, though, they could see the mountain tops start to appear above the water again. And Noah decided that he was going to send out a bird. It was a big black bird, not a black bird, but a big black bird called a raven. And the raven just flew away, never came back. That wasn't much help. So Noah waited a week, and then he sent out another bird. This time he sent out a dove. And the dove flew around and it came back. So Noah waited another week. And he sent the dove out again. And this time it came back with a leaf, an olive branch and leaf in its beak. And that was a sign of hope. And after another 2 months, the ark rested on the top of a mountain. And God told Noah and his family, his wife and his sons and their sons and their wives, he told them all to get out of the ark. This is the way I paint people quickly. I could paint people quickly by just throwing my paint pots over everybody, but I don't think you'd be too happy if I did that, would you? No. So there we've got 3 and 6 and 2 more. Let's give them some heads so they can see. They all got out of the ark, Noah and his sons and their wives. 8 of them in all, and all the animals as well. They all got out of the ark and started to disperse around everywhere. And then Noah did something that we all need to remember to do when someone says something good for us. If we want something, if we're asking for something, what special word, what my mom used to call a magic word, what special word do we say, or should we say, when we want somebody to do something or give us something?
Please.
Please. That's right, yes. And if someone does something for us and gives us something, what special word should we say then?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we should. Please and thank you. And so Noah decided to say thank you. And that's what we're doing now when we have this harvest service. We're saying thank you, aren't we? For all the things that God has provided for us to eat and everything else that He's provided for us as well. Noah didn't do a service like we're having with singing and prayers and things like that. Well, he might have done, but the story doesn't tell us he did. What Noah did was something that people used to do in those days to give thanks to God. He decided he would sacrifice an animal to give thanks to God. So he built an altar out of stones and put some wood on it, and he took one of the animals and killed it and laid it on top of the altar. Just put it there, and then he set fire to the wood. And the smoke came up from the fire, and God smelt the cooking meat, and He was pleased. And He made the promise that we had before. This promise here on the verse. Let's say it again, shall we? After 3. 1, 2, 3. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. Let's say it again. Can we stand up? If you can. If you can't, don't worry. But if you can, please stand up. And let's say it again after 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. This time, if you can, don't worry if you can't, but and I'm going to struggle. If you can, stand on one foot. Okay? And I might have to lean on something. I'm getting old, I used to be able to do this easily. But, okay, after 99. 1, 2, 3, 4, 99. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. You can sit down. And later on as well, God made another promise. He promised that He would never send a flood like that again. And then He wondered, would people forget His promise? Actually, history showed long after that, many times God made promises and people forgot them. And God did things for His people, and they forgot. So He's actually quite right. We do forget the promises of God, don't we? And God decided to remind people of His promise. He would do something very special. He said, I will put my bow in the sky. And what kind of bow was He talking about? Was he talking about a bow and arrow? Or was he talking about a bow that you put in your hair or on your shoes? Or, let's see what type of bow he was actually talking about. Let's have a look at that. That one's not quite come out quite right. The middle one, the orange, still. There we are. Get some other brushes now. Let's see if I can finish this off here. What we've got there. We have got what we got there. A rainbow. Glad you can recognise it. Okay, he put a rainbow in. I love to see rainbows because rainbows remind me every time I see them, and that's the reason why God put them there. That's what He said. Because to remind us that of promises like this one. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. And it also, in a simpler way, it reminds me, whenever I see a rainbow, again, look at the yellow letters as I paint this, it reminds me that you see that?
God cares for us.
God cares for us, yes. God cares for us. And He provides the food that we eat. That's why we're here today for celebrating our harvest, isn't it? Yeah. But that's an amazing thing, how God shows His care for us by providing for our needs. And He made that promise that as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. He made that promise. And He also said that He would never send the flood again like He sent then. And God keeps His promises. Rainbows remind us that God cares for us, that God keeps His promises. But the most amazing way that God shows His care and His love for us is the fact that Jesus, God's Son, died on a cross to take the punishment that we all deserve for our selfishness, for our lies, for our stealing, for our hateful thoughts, for the fact that we don't love God with all our heart and with all our mind and all our soul and all our strength, and we don't love our neighbour as ourselves. For all these things, in other words, for all our sin, God cares for us in that Jesus died on that cross to take the punishment that we all deserve, that I deserve, and that every one of us deserves. That's how God cares for us. Jesus died on that cross. He was buried. We said that in the creed earlier on. But then He rose again. And He's alive. Those arrows there remind us that Jesus died, He was buried, and He rose again. And we should thank Him for that. Thank Him, not just on harvest, and not just on Sundays, but every day of the week. Thank God for the wonderful thing that He did to show His love and His care for us by dying on the cross. In order to be saved from God's punishment then, people had to get on board that ark. Only 8 people did that, sadly. But today, if you want to be saved from the punishment that you deserve, then you have to put your trust in Jesus and His death on the cross and for His resurrection. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you need to admit that you're a sinner and say sorry to God. Believe in what Jesus did for you, dying on the cross and rising again. And thank Him for that. And ask Him to forgive you and come into your life and help you to turn around and live his way from now on. And that does take an about turn from the way that we live. If you want to remember how to do that, just think of those 3 words. Sorry. Thank you. Please. I'm sorry for my sins. Thank you for dying on the cross for me and rising again. Please forgive me and come into my life and help me to turn around and live your way. Or if you want more help to do that, perhaps come and you want to have a chat with me about that, perhaps come and have a sit down in one of these front pews later on, these front seats here. And so that I know that's what you want to talk to me about that. Or just take one of these leaflets that I've got out here. They're both called Turn to God. The blue ones are for grown-ups, the red ones are a little bit more simple language, easier to read for children, but they say the same thing. I'll leave those, you can take one of those for yourself. I just want to read now, just to show us that what I've been saying is actually from the Bible. And I'm going to read from Genesis chapter 8, and starting at verse 18. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moves on the earth came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. And then moving on to chapter 9, verse 8. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you, and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you, and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth. Finishing there at chapter 9, verse 17.